Hey guys, this is JT.
It's Julie. Welcome back to the Talk of the Town podcast.
And on today's episode, we had Jonathan Greene. I was super excited for this one. He was my agent for my first property purchase, and I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. He shared a lot of great tips about real estate, but also what it's like to be a business owner, making the transition from being a lawyer. He had a long career in art and eventually becoming a real estate agent and running his own teams.
We hope you guys enjoy the episode and be sure to subscribe on YouTube and leave us a review on Spotify.
All right. Thank you for having us in your home. We appreciate the hosting.
Yeah, wow, my pleasure. It's good to have you guys over. I haven't seen you in a while. The last time I saw you was probably at that meetup. That was a while ago.
Yeah, when was
In
that?
Montclair. It's probably almost a year ago.
Over a year ago.
Yeah, that was fun. That was like my first ever networking event or like any sort of event. I've never gone to anything like that. Yeah.
A lot of things have changed.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah.
No
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, kind of your life before real estate. And
Yeah. So I'm Jonathan Greene. I have been investing in real estate my whole life. I run a big on-market team here in New Jersey and in a couple other states as we grow. An on-market team just means your traditional real estate agents. It's my fourth team that I've built, but I started as an attorney. That was my first job. I worked 8 years as a prosecutor, 2 years as a criminal defense attorney in the state of Florida. Switched after my dad passed away, got into the art world, stayed in the art world, as you are in my house, so there's art everywhere. Was in the art world for 6 years. I had 3 galleries in Sarasota. I moved one of my galleries to the Lower East Side of New York City in 2008. So we lasted 1 year in New York City. It was fun. Didn't make any money, of course, because no one was spending money at that time. And then I stayed in the art world, worked in Chelsea, and then I was actually the curator at the Hunterdon Art Museum in Clinton, New Jersey. So New Jersey Museum for 18 months. Taught at Montclair State for 3 years, which was a hybrid of art and law, and ran their museum management master's program, graduated the kids out of that when they closed the program. And then while that was happening, I got my real estate license. And when I got my license, my sister was like, why don't you do this? We've been investing our whole lives. I learned that from my dad. And that's been kind of the trajectory. The last 10 years, it's been on market real estate while still investing, and then turned into my own podcast and running the meetups that you guys have been to. And yeah, that's how I ended up where I am today.
Wow.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
People are like, do you get bored a lot? I'm like, yes, I get bored. But I like personal growth and things like that. So I'm literally an obsessive learner. I just like learning stuff. And I think that people think that you can only learn in your own field. And that is like the biggest falsity out there. Everything that I learned as an attorney, I put into play now, and I don't practice law. And I think that's what people forget.
Yeah. I always get stuck in this mindset of like, or at least that's how I was raised. Like once you pick something, you just have to like follow through with it, and that's like the rest of your life. But slowly I'm learning that you could literally do whatever you want. And like you said, like you can take those skills, and it's amazing how something like I was in the healthcare field. I went to school for radiation therapy. So I worked with cancer patients, and I was like, how am I going to apply like what I've learned to something creative, because I've always wanted to do something creative and fun. And it's amazing how those skills, even though it doesn't seem like it, transfer over so much into like other parts of my life.
Yeah, I mean, empathy, relationships. I mean, in between all of that in real estate, I took a year off at one point during the time when I realized I was sitting at a table with my kids. This was 7 years ago, maybe. And we were eating dinner, and my phone rang. I had a different team at the time. It was going crazy. And I remember saying to my kids, like, oh, I have to take this. It's important. And right when I said the word important, I was so mad at myself. And I immediately the next day shut the team down, gave it to my partner, quit the business for a year. And all I did for a year was work on personal growth. Got certified as a life coach during that time, a 30-week thing. It wasn't like a weekend seminar. And that changed the way I did business in any business I was going to do. And then I decided to come back and build teams differently when I came back. But to your point, what I learned from the life coaching was everything that I've done can be applied to whatever I'm going to do. It's just about how I use it. But I grew up, I thought I was just supposed to go to college, and then I went to law school. My dad was a lawyer, but then I realized at some point, wait, my dad was also an artist, and he was also, all he did was invest in real estate. So why am I trying to be just one thing when your generation and my kids' generation, it's like multi-hyphenate lifestyle is it. You can do things that are fun. You can, can still have a W-2, but you might be able to string together a few different things that turn into what normally would be looked at as a W-2.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. I think especially for us too, like we have our own businesses. I do bookkeeping and she does the jewelry, and like together we do social media and we run the podcast. So it's like, and I think there's a lot of chatter out there too. Like before we started this, I was a big believer in focus, and I think there's some merit to that too, where people say, well, you should put all your energy into one thing and see how far it can get you. But what do you kind of think about that?
I feel like that's what people who are scared to fail say, and failure is the linchpin of growth. So if you don't try, you're not going to succeed. And if you only try at one thing, you're eventually going to hit a wall. When we all work W-2s, you eventually get to a point where you can't really go any higher because the bosses are higher and they're not leaving. So if you want scale, that's why a lot of people, like I work with real estate investors, they go into real estate investing at whatever age, whether it be 20, 40, 60, because they're looking for alternative ways of building income. Just like you guys with this business and this podcast and me having a podcast, it's scale to connect with people without generally an ask. And I think that's kind of where modern marketing is, where I think it's succeeding and where other people are probably failing is they're just trying to sell all the time. Yeah. And if you just spend a year or 2 years just adding value, you'll never have to sell. I don't sell my services. I don't care if people want to work with me. I mean, if they do, great. But I don't want to work with people I don't want to work with. So if they're rude or disrespectful, I will never work with them. I don't care that much to do it. I'm trying to live like a balanced life. And that means saying no to more things and understanding, like you said, like, hey, I don't have to stay in this one funnel. Yeah. I'm going to use the skills that I got during my education to enhance something different.
Yeah. I think it's very easy sometimes to focus on like the monetary aspect of things too, and people get caught up in that, and even like I do sometimes, and then I'm like, wait, the whole reason I'm leaving my like 9 to 5 to like do this is to like really improve my quality of life. So if I'm just surrounding myself with people I don't want to work with just because they're making me money, it's just like I'm gonna end up back in the same spot where I was, just like unhappy and like
exactly. Well, I mean, you need money to live if someone else isn't paying your bills, but would you rather make less and be happy or make more and be unhappy? You may think you want to make more and be unhappy now, but I'm telling you don't. Yeah. Because when you get older, you'll have, it was all wasted time. Yeah. And it's open now. There's so many more opportunities. Just look at something like DoorDash. I particularly don't want to do DoorDash. It wouldn't be my thing, but it's an opportunity, same as Uber, for people to make money in an alternative way. You just have to be a good driver and be organized to pick up the stuff and give good client service. So like these opportunities are out there more, and it allows people to do what we said, like you can do 3 or 4 things and then maybe you're less bored. Everybody gets bored working a 9 to 5. I mean, I was a prosecutor, so it's pretty interesting, albeit insane sometimes. So that wasn't a boring job. But just trudging to the office every day, I started my first job. It was 1994. That's when I went to work. My salary was $25,000 and I loved it. And I worked like 100 hours a week. But it's different after the pandemic. Remote work changed it, and it's harder for people. People say, oh, well, everybody's more productive remote. I mean, not everybody. It can be hard to get the motivation if you're just around the house all the time. So it's really figuring out what works. And sometimes you need that. Well, I need one to go out, and I'd like to have one where I work that from home as well.
Yeah. As far as like, what was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought.
It's okay. Take us back to your childhood, and you kind of mentioned that you learned a lot from your dad about real estate. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah. I mean, I think I think I learned a lot just because I lost my parents at a young age. And I think for anybody who's lost a parent, it changes the way you do things. My mom passed away when I was 20. My dad passed away when I was 33. And I think because my mom passed away when I was 20, I then knew like, oh, I better pay attention to everything my dad says. Like I better learn more stuff about him, because there's things like about my mom's childhood that like I probably wish I asked more questions, but what did I know? I was 20, failing out of college at the time, just to try to figure, that out. So I think that helped me build a relationship with my dad. But he was always like a teacher in a very what you think is annoying way as a kid, which I'm probably annoying to my kids the same way. But eventually it all sinks in. And I realized at 20, I was really involved in investments my whole life. So I was picking up rents, at 18. I was inside properties that I owned from 5 years old on. I had properties in my name early. So I was very fortunate to have a dad who was very open financially. He, at 18, said, here, I'm putting X amount of money into a stock, into Merrill Lynch account. You're going to invest in stocks. Here's your broker. You figure it out. And I did, and I started making money, and I was making pretty good money in stocks as a kid because he was open enough to just allow me the opportunity to do it. So, I grew up with, my mom was a hippie, my dad was a non-disciplinarian. I never had a voice raised to me. I never had a curfew. So, for me, parenting, a lot of people look at it and they're always saying like, oh, you need to be harder. Not necessarily to me, just be harder on kids. They don't know these days. And I'm like, no, things are different for everybody. Like I turned out okay. I never did drugs. I never was like, I did stupid things, but it wasn't because I had the freedom that I was doing stupid things. It's because I was a stupid kid. Like we're all stupid kids at some point. So I think I've taken the things that I learned from my parents. I think we're always trying to just be a better parent than our parent because they're good. We always want to be better. I want my kids to be better, than I was. Yeah. So I think they taught me a lot about that. And then you learn a lot as you go. You learn a lot even in retrospect from what my parents did as people. As I go on now, even I'm over 50, looking back at what they did, I'm still learning from my parents, even though they've been gone for so long.
Yeah. That's really amazing. And that's a great way to like look at things, is that, each generation you want them to kind of improve in that way. And yeah, it's just like amazing the lessons that you learn. And that's an interesting perspective too, because I think like for someone that hasn't lost someone like that, it's hard to like really make sense of that like time is finite. And it sounds like for you were able to like really materialize that, unfortunately. But yeah.
Well, you have to. If bad things happen, it's how you react to them. I could either, of course, I'm still upset. No, anybody who ever, I always said when people said like, what advice would you give someone to counsel a friend who's lost a family member really close? I'm like, well, tell them it's not going to get better.
Yeah.
Because that's the truth. Because everyone will, pat you. Oh, don't worry. In 6 months I'll go. It's not. Yeah. It's literally not better now. 32 years later, losing my mom. It's the same. Yeah. But it's your perspective around what am I going to take from this? Can I take the lessons that they taught me, and can I add that? For me, it's okay. Well, now I'm going to do that with my kids, or do that outwardly to help other people. Yeah. But it took that year off that I spoke about before was really a change in trajectory for me. Not because my life was not that much different, but the way that I looked at it was different. I was just working. I wasn't focusing. I wasn't like working on myself. I wasn't trying to be a better person. I wasn't trying to figure out like which things were my fault. I was just like going. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when you're going, your perspective is nowhere, so you can't really get anywhere. You're just going to end up in this. You may have a successful year, but I guarantee you, if you're not focused on how you're growing as a person, you're not going to have continued successful years, or you're going to burn out or have health problems. And, at this age, I'm just trying to focus on that while also enjoying what I do.
Yeah. And like, I always like, we both now work for ourselves, and it's tough working for yourself. Like it's very comfortable, especially when you come from a W-2 job and they're giving you a very nice check, you know, every 2 weeks. And it's like, oh, you're crazy to like leave that. Like, why would you leave that? And just from your perspective and your experience, like, is the grass always greener? And like, what is better? What should someone do as far as like, if they're unhappy in a W-2, like, should they leave and start something of their own? Like, or is it really not that glamorous? Like, it sounds like stability, but is it really like just as stable? Or like,
Yeah, that's a really good question. So a lot of real estate investors who are ready to invest are trying to figure out when they should leave their W-2. And this applies to anyone who's working a W-2. So I would give the same advice. You need to create runway for yourself. So even if you hate your job, hate your boss, don't like what you're doing, then just go in with your head down, just knock out the work, be the best at the work to earn the most money while you're there until you have enough where, you know, I have this amount saved so I can, you know, attempt this vision. But I think the people that get in trouble are the people who come home every day, oh, I hate my work, I hate my job. Like you maybe you do, but just stop talking about it because it's a means to end. They're giving you money.
Yeah.
And if they're giving you money, if you're not being treated well, that's one thing. If you just don't like the job or you don't like the personality, that's another thing. If you can't find another similar job and that's the thing that you're the best at, earn as much money as you can until you know you have enough that you can leave and start your creative venture, investing, anything like that. But I do think it's a misnomer to think like, hey, modern society, like we're saying, there's a lot of things you can do. You can drive Uber, you know, you can do this. That doesn't mean it's easy. It's not easy to just pick up rides all day, you know? So that culture of saying like, hey, it's no big deal. Just like do social media. We were talking about this before.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's not that easy. You know, it's not that easy to be very good at something. So to think you can just go make money on your own is a fallacy. So I would always say, make as much money as you can while somebody's paying you to do something that you already know how to do. And then once you're 100% sure you have enough money and then have even more than that, then it's a good risk to take to leave because you're going to just bet on yourself at that point. But if you bet too early, you're going to be stuck both ways. You're just going to end up back at the job. That's what happens with a lot of people in who get their real estate license. They're like, I want to, you know, leave my W-2. I want to become an agent. And then they think they have enough or they close one deal and they're like, oh, I'm going to be an agent. And then they don't want to do the work because they're like, well, I thought it was, you know, I'm an independent
Sounds easy.
contractor. I can just do whatever I want. It's like, right. But how are you going to get the money? You know, you can't just do whatever you want all day and also get money. It's even harder, like you said, when you go out on your own because no one's telling you where you have to be. So maybe you just feel like crushing a show all day. I like that too, but I'm going to work the next 6 days, you know, for 15 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think from my perspective, like that was one part of like being in business that I didn't necessarily like. I think I thought of it, but I didn't really understand like what it was. But like I like to think of things on like how much am I making per hour and how much is my time really worth. But the tricky part about that is you can charge whatever you want and that's what you get for the work that you do. But all the time that it takes to acquire a client, like if you factor all that in, you're not really making, you might be making half that or less. You're probably making less than half that. So, and especially, you know, if you're an agent, it might take you, I mean, you could speak to this, but it might take you 20 showings and maybe you have a client that is very particular or whatever the case may be, and you could do all this work and they could even not close with you. And you know,
but that's part of the business, you know, and the people who are, you know, wow crying about it, it's like, well, this is what you signed up for. I mean, you know, because we've done a deal together. You go out and your job as an agent is to the best job every time out, make sure that the client is fully informed of everything that they're doing and that they feel comfortable in the process. And if you do a great job, a client's not going to leave you. And if they do, it's their choice. It's called free will. You know, everybody's always like, well, it was my client. It's like, you don't own anybody. And the way that you make sure that nobody leaves is you do a better job than anyone else can do. And that's what I try to do. And that's what I train my agents to do, is just to be the best agent and advisor that you can be. And if so, you don't have to worry about buyer's agreements or whether somebody's going to leave, because they're just going to leave and have somebody who's not going to do as great a job, and then they'll want to come back. But I mean, that's the part of it that is hard when you're out on your own. It's like you can call your own shots, but people don't like to be accountable to others. They don't like to be accountable to themselves because it's hard to look in the mirror and say, hey, you're not really doing that good a job. And once I learned to look at it and say, like, here are the areas where I could do better, that's when you can go to 10x, because if you're not self-aware, you're never going to get anywhere.
What do you think, like, your draw is like to people? Like, why do people flock to you? Why are you such a good real estate agent? Like, what qualities you have, like, that maybe came from being a lawyer to now being a real estate agent, did you carry over and you think is making you do so well?
Well, the funny thing is, I am a complete introvert. I don't want to go out. I don't like being around people in general, but I'm really good with people because I actually care what happens to them. But the thing is, if somebody crosses me or doesn't treat me with respect, I don't care in the slightest bit. I'll never talk to them again. It's no problem. I think the thing that I succeed on is just honesty. You know, when I'm going out on a first showing, I'm talking about home inspections and I'm talking about the things in the future. And I'm saying, like, I don't think this is a good deal for you. You know, my agents are trained by me to say no. And a lot of what people want in society is just everyone to yes them along. But when you get yes along, you end up with bad properties where you haven't done due diligence and you don't know what you need to know. So in my opinion, if someone comes to me and says, I want to buy this house, and I say, like, listen, this isn't a good deal for you. Like, it's as is, you're a first time home buyer. We're not doing the deal. I've had people say to me, like, well, you have to write the offer. I'm like, I don't have to do anything. Like, you can write the offer with someone else. I don't want the money. I don't want my name on a transaction where I think it's bad for you. And I think that's, again, what separates me. I don't have what we call in the business commission breath, which it's fortunate that I can say that. I understand if you're paycheck to paycheck where you might want that commission, but you'll make so much more money in the long term if you're always focused on what is the best for the client, even when the client thinks that you're wrong. Your job is to protect the client from themselves a lot because they're hopped up. It's a crazy market in New Jersey. Like, you have to overbid. We don't want people waving away everything unless they understand all of the parameters of doing it. And we might not be comfortable with that. And I think that's real estate industry, the on-market industry, has an extremely low bar to entry. Everyone who's in the business will agree most of the agents are not good. That's not going to be shocking to anyone. It's just the truth. To get to be the best, and there's maybe, you know, a 10%, 20% are okay, 10% are good, 5% are really, really good. To get there, you have to be honest about what's going to happen, because that's how people will refer more people to you. Say, hey, they told me it wasn't a good deal. You know, you have to be willing to walk away in order to show that you actually have value. If you'll do anything for anybody, you have no value.
Yeah. And I think in real estate, like, the word of mouth referral carries so heavily, especially like in my experience. I did a lot of networking, which actually started with you. I did all my initial networking over
On Zoom.
Those were freaking awesome. Yeah. I always tell her about
Old school.
Yeah. I always tell her about the days I would work until 5 p.m. I would take the dog for a walk and do a Bigger Pockets episode, and then I'd hop on Zoom.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the greatest summer ever. But like with networking, it's just crazy how when you go, like, everything is shared. Everyone wants to know who this guy's plumber is and who that person's electrician is and who closed this deal. And the reputation really does carry, especially in those environments. But even in general, for people who aren't investors, like, everyone wants to know when you buy a house who your realtor is. And the word of mouth is so important.
You'll find out later, though, that some people think they had a good realtor and they didn't, you know, because then a year later they realize there was all these things missed. Sometimes that's a realtor's fault. Sometimes it's just happenstance. Things happen with houses. And sometimes realtors are the ones that everyone looks to blame. And we're not, you know, because buyers, again, in these markets, buyers are doing crazy stuff that they shouldn't be doing because they want to win so bad. And sometimes people want to win so bad they forget. You know, and that ends up in failed deals. So a lot of it is just figuring out the relationship. My clients stick with me because we trust each other. We're friends. I'm friends with all of my clients. I mean, I talk to them after. I know their kids. I know when their birthdays are. You know, we hang out because that's the type of business I want to build. And that makes it much easier later, like you said, to get referrals because their friends all know about me. Not because I needed to go pass out my cards or put at the bottom of my email, hey, if you have a referral. I've never asked for a referral in my whole life, not once. And I get a lot of them all the time. But I get them through, you know, social media also, because you guys know from being in this business, social media, if you're just putting content out there that's real, authentic, and is obviously verifiable, there could be people who are following you for a year. You have no idea who they are. But when they contact you, they've fully vetted you by watching you for a year. And I've closed several deals like that, high-end seven-figure deals, just from people who were just looking on, either lurking on Bigger Pockets or just looking at social media, and they had built up enough trust. And that's where people go wrong. You can do that, but if you're not authentic on social, everybody knows.
Yeah, that's very true. Especially in time. You could fake it for a little bit, but you can't fake it forever. That's for sure.
Yeah. But that's also why podcasts are so important. I always talk about it on my podcast. Like if you can sit down and talk for an hour, you know somebody knows what they're talking about, because they'll be exposed if not. So if you bring on an expert in relationships and they're good for like 11 minutes, they're like, you don't know anything. You spent your whole life learning about relationships and you can't have a conversation about it. Like, it's exposure. That's why podcasts are great. You can learn a whole lot about people as people and how much they know about their business by just letting them talk.
Yeah.
That's
so true.
huge. Yeah. And like, you talked to, like, how did you transition from, you know, being a lawyer, then working for yourself, and then like with real estate, and then now running a team? Because that's like a whole nother like ball field of like, how do you manage people and like create this connection? And that's like amazing to be able to do that and bring people together.
It's very hard. So this is my fourth team, and I wouldn't say none of my teams failed. We all did very well, but I failed as a leader by creating the wrong expectations, or for trying to hire people in order to keep up with the lead flow. You know, we were on a program from Zillow where they were just dumping like, 300 leads a month on us. So I just started hiring agents. We got up to 50 agents at one time. That's like, having a big brokerage yourself. And I was looking around being like, this isn't for me. Like, we're actually going to end up at way more than 50 now with our new version, but it's just a different way of running it. And I was putting too much pressure on the agents, but I didn't have a choice. The lead source was telling us, like, you have to close all these leads. So instead, we got rid of our relationship with the lead source in order to like run a more holistic business. But I think, learning about teams is learning about people, and that means you're me first. I needed to learn about what my skill sets are, build out a team where I have buffers that can do the things that I need that I don't want to do, so that I'm not frustrated trying to do them. And then I can only, like people always say, you can only bring a horse to water. I can only coach, give the information. I can't go to my agent's house and put them on the computer and on the MLS and look up properties. I can't make them email. And I found the more that I like threatened, I would be on calls, like, on the last version of the team, like, oh, everybody's going to get fired. And like, I mean, it was true. Yeah. And it did end up happening, but it was like, that doesn't motivate anyone. But you learn, though, when you're dealing in a team concept like this, where I'm an independent contractor under my brokerage, all of these agents are independent contractors, so I can't tell them to do anything. I can on the team tell them, because I can fire them, but I can't fire them from the brokerage. So it's a very iffy thing, because real estate, people get into it like for the freedom, like we were saying, but then it's too much freedom, and you can't succeed at real estate if you're not working a lot. It's a 24/7 business. You just have to understand boundaries, time blocking, in order to make it a business that is one that works with the lifestyle that you want.
How do you like vet people to come onto your team, or do you kind of just like bring them on and see how they do and you can kind of mold them, or is it more like
to do that. Now much more. I think now it's much more upfront. At the time we were hiring the most, like we just needed to get people in. We just assumed like, hey, don't people want leads? We'll just give you a bucket of leads, you'll follow up. That's not the case, because it's hard. I just went under contract on a property yesterday. Our first contact was December 22, and that's very common.
Wow, really?
I'm working with these people, being friends with them, talking to them, texting all the time for a year, 2 years sometimes. That's why, we're trying to figure out top 10, top 20, who we need to keep in contact with, but it changes all the time. So, I mean, I think now what I'm looking for is culture fits is more important to me. I want people who want to be part of the team, who look at me as a leader and say, I want to learn from that guy. Like, I want to be around him. I want to soak up the knowledge. And that's why we do on market, but we do a lot of investor stuff because that's my background. And that's where the meetups where we met started.
Yeah.
And that's my wheelhouse. But I love on market real estate too. But I think like anybody, if you read all the books on teams, and I read a lot, I think if you're looking at it, it's culture is what gets people in. And if you always know when someone's not a culture fit. And the biggest mistakes I made, I'd say in 2022 and 2023, were hiring people who I thought would produce. I knew they weren't a good culture fit. And, you know, a 30 days in, I'm, you know, telling Crystal, my team success manager and one of my best friends, like, why did I do this? Like, I don't even like this person. Like, they're not acting like the type of person that we want representing my brand. And now that's way more important to me than trying to, you know, catch up to the leads, because we got rid of the leads. So now it's how can we build everybody up to build their own leads, which again, that's going to make them more money than the lead sources in the long run.
Yeah, that's so true. Is there like a particular quality that you found to be important, whether it's like from your first team, whether it was from a bad experience or like a really good experience, that you are like, every person in this team should have this quality?
Yeah, two. Self-awareness is number one. It's lacking across everywhere. Like, I think it's probably, if you look at right now, there's a loneliness epidemic. It's a lot of it's built on self-awareness. People aren't okay with exposing their own faults. So how can you get any better? So that's one. And that goes right to the other, which is coachability. You know, there's resistant people and then there's coachable people. And that's why I look for people who are invested in me, because I'm the one who's coaching and I'm the one who's giving the training and I'm the one who needs to motivate them. So if they look at me as just a source to make money, that's not going to be the culture fit that I want. So it's that, do they understand? Because if you're not self-aware, you can't take criticism. You go the other way. And like, the only reason I would give criticism to help them reach their goals. And if you can't take that, you're not going to last long with me, because we're not going to get anywhere. No one's going to achieve it. And your clients then are not going to achieve it. My job is to coach my agents to be the best advisors possible so that the clients have the best experience. And that's what they need to understand. I don't care about the money. The money will come the better you do with the clients and the better you give them advice, not sales.
Yeah.
You know, they make us call ourselves salespeople. We're not salespeople, we're advisors. And the more that we do that over sales, you don't have to worry about the other stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And with, you know, real estate, it's so interpersonal. There's a lot of, you know, everything's on a scale, but I would say as far as like having a relationship with someone, with a client, like being a real estate agent, there's so much time that you have to spend with somebody when you go to view properties and stuff like that. So yeah, like the trust and the reputation is so important there. I want to ask about your year off. I heard this on another podcast you did, that you read 100 books in 1 year. Is that correct?
It is.
So,
but it was an error, and I'll explain why. But go ahead.
I kind of just wanted to ask, aside from like what was in those books, what kind of life lessons did you learn about yourself and about just life in general?
Yeah, well, that was a year where I was just committed to everything. I was reading books on happiness, parenting. I read a lot of parenting books, and I read like a lot of, you know, like the Slight Edge or Atomic Habits type books, you know, ways to get in, 10X type books. And I was kind of putting them all together at the time to try to figure out things that I needed to adjust in my life, things that would get me like a more Zen lifestyle. I'm really into Buddhist philosophies, you know, which led, you know, my podcast called Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. It's about the mindful approach, but that's my life has been changed by being more mindful, focusing on meditation. That's when I started meditating, was like 7 years ago. I haven't missed a day in 7 years. Not a single day.
How do you meditate? Like, what's your form of meditation?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And part of what changed me was not being strict about it. Some people would say like, oh, well, you have to do TM, or you have to, you know, sit in Zazen, or it has to be quiet. I wake up every morning. I use Headspace for 10 minutes, at least Calm for 10 minutes, and then Peloton for 10 minutes. The truth is, sometimes I'm scrolling on my phone because I'm tired, but I have to get up, but I'm still listening and doing the guided meditation. So strictly, some people say, like, well, you're not doing it the right way. I mean, I don't care. I've done that every single day for 7 years. So it works, and I'm 100% calmer. And a lot of times I do a meditation at night, a sleep meditation. I do it in the middle of the day. If I'm flying, I'm going to do a meditation. And sometimes I walk, I just walk aimlessly. I'll just walk. I have the same route around this town that I always do, 30 minutes. I listen to Audible while I'm on there, which is how I clear a lot of books. But the year that I read 100 books, I did it the wrong way. Like last year, I read 47 books. This year, I'm on pace to read like 70-ish. But the year I read 100, my friends were all like, oh, you can do it. Just put Audible on 2x. And I was like, okay. And I was retaining stuff, but it was going too fast. So again, just like other people in real estate investing, they're trying to hit as many doors as they want instead of like making money.
Yeah.
I was reading books to hit 100. I wasn't taking in enough information. So now I strictly only listen to podcasts or books on 1x, and it takes the amount of time that it takes. And because I do things like I'll walk for 30 minutes to 60 minutes a day, I'm always listening to a podcast or Audible. And it's just my thing. That's not multitasking to me, because I'm not in danger of like messing one up. It's me achieving two things at the same time. And if I can learn while I'm doing something else, if I'm in the car and I drive a lot, podcast or book every single time. I like music, but I listen to music in my free time when I want to relax.
That's cool. That's a cool self-realization, because I think, with a lot of things in life, there are ways that you can kind of cheat yourself to achieve some kind of internal or external status. So in your case, you might have been telling yourself that it would have been really cool to just hit this number of books. And then you realize at a certain point, like, well, I'm cheating myself by missing out on some information if I just, listen slower. And I think that's like really important for growth. Like you mentioned, is just being able to be like self-aware and like understand that. And yeah, that's really cool.
I think if you look at modern culture, we talk a lot about social media. It's like, how many followers do you need? I don't know. None. I just made a post the other day that I can guarantee, 100% guarantee, that the amount of followers that I have on Instagram, which is currently less than 3,000, guarantee you I have much more impact and much more deals and friendships through that than people with 100,000. When you have 11 posts and 60,000 followers, we all know what's going on. So it's always going to be quality over quantity. Less is more, and minimalism. And I think those are all lessons that I learned that change. Same with the books. Sometimes I'm reading a book or listening and I realize like, oh, I haven't been here. And I used to not go back. Now I just go back 2 pages. What do I care?
Yeah.
I want to read the pages. That's why I'm reading a book.
Yeah.
And I read like 7 to 10 different books at a time. So I have a lot of different options when I sit down to read. I generally focus in on about 3, like one on Audible, which I listen to fiction on Audible. And then I'm always reading some type of self-help-ish book and a business book, and then one fiction book, and then with the Audible. So that, maybe I wake up, I usually read that self-help in the morning because that's what works. But at night, fiction. But you just got to figure out routines. And everyone jokes about my schedule, like it's color coded. I've been teaching time blocking for more than 10 years. Shower is on my schedule.
Wow.
People are like, why would you put shower on your schedule? I'm like, I need to know when I need to get into the shower. They said, well, you're not going to forget to shower. I'm like, you'd be surprised, because I don't want to run up to a meeting where I have to be on Zoom and I need to be like showered. Some things I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
But I need to know how much time I have like on my schedule, just travel time between every showing. So I know like that's blocked, because I have a lot of people like you guys booked on a Calendly link. I have like 9 Calendly links that people can book on. So I have to close off the spots so they can't book in a time frame. So I never like to cancel something. So I want it to be perfectly set up. I am a little anal retentive about it, but it works for me.
Every day you do that?
My schedule it looks insane when people look at it. But I would say that most people who argue against time blocking think that it's going to be rigid. And I would tell you 100% that it's the absolute opposite. By knowing when everything's going to happen, I can see all my free blocks. I never have to cancel with anyone. I always know what I need to do. I have recurring things on my schedule, so they're always there. You know, when my kids were younger and they were in high school and elementary school, the first thing I did at the start of the semester was I would go to the school schedule, all the days off and all the half days I would mark off. All the parents are going to understand this. If you don't do that, you're going to have something set at 2, and then you're going to get a call from the school like, hey, it's a half day. And you're like, oh, I didn't put that on. So it would be there every single day. So I could never double book during that time.
Makes you more relaxed, even though it looks more stressful. It's like everything's booked out for you. You don't have to like think about it.
It looks calm to me because I can look at it. Like my day today is a disaster. I told you guys, like I'm recording from 1 to 2, so we'll be like 2:10, and then I had a 9 to 10:30, a 10:30 to 11, 11 to 11:30, 11:30 to 12. I had a 30-minute break somewhere in there. And then I did that podcast and then this podcast. And then after this, I have a 4 to 5:30, a mastermind. And then after that, I have a 2 hours block that I have to send properties out because it's a Wednesday. That's when I do it. But because of the way that I've set up my life, I'm not stressed out about it. I look at it and I'm like, okay, this day's kind of a mess. My email is going to be messy by the end, but I know what's in front of me. And the reason I have everything on my schedule today is all stuff that I want to do. You know, so I don't have to look at it and say, like, some days are just going to be more than others. That's just the way it is.
You ever take vacations?
I need to take more vacations. Let's say that. I like vacations. I don't like traveling. I like being in a destination, but I really don't like flying, or I like driving. I would drive anywhere. I think that's so much fun. I would want to take a road trip with my kids, but I plan on traveling more. I kind of got out of the habit during the pandemic and just haven't traveled, but I think it's coming back. I think for me, someone who's involved in real estate, it's more interesting for me. Like I want to get a property in the Catskills. I want to have places to go because my sister and I used to have a lot of short-term rentals, and we use them to go to. That's why they're great. I think that's something more likely, that I'd love to have a weekend place instead of being like, you know, major travel. Although I would like to travel again. There's a few places I've been and some places that I haven't been that I would love to go. Be great if I could just blink and be there and not have to do the whole sitting on a plane for 18 hours. But
like a top of your list destination.
I think Iceland's the next one that I want to go to, just because proximity wise, it's pretty close. It's like not far. It's like 4 or 5 hours, you know, from planes. So for me, that makes it a little bit easier. I've been to Japan. I would love to go again, but that's an 18 to 20 hour flight. So it's a lot of buildup. But yeah, proximity wise, it's Iceland. There's some places in the United States that I haven't been to that I'd love to been to. I've never been to New Orleans. I just got off a podcast recording. She invests like primarily in New Orleans, and I'm like, why haven't I been there? Wow. So I would like to drive, like really drive across the country at some point, you know, take a month or 2 months to just really do what a lot of people are doing now. I probably wouldn't stay in the car type of thing, but you know, I'll stay in Airbnbs. But that idea sounds fun to me, to kind of see what's out there without going too far.
Yeah. Nice. So I'm a beginner as far as investing. It's always really interested me and I want to get into it. Like, how do you feel right now about the climate in New Jersey as far as like buying a multifamily home as like my first purchase, and like just in general, like where real estate is at right now?
It's great. That's going to make people feel weird because in New Jersey, the prices are insane. It's very, very competitive. But what that means is there's continued appreciation. So finding a quote deal is very difficult. You're not finding a deal. Like, let's just be clear. If you're finding a deal, there's something wrong with it. That's why it's a deal. And it's been that way for the last 3 years. So you have to change your mindset about what a deal is, what it costs to you, and what you're comfortable with. So is multifamily house hacking competitive? Yeah, it's competitive. Work with agents who know how to do it. It's less competitive because you know what you're doing, but you're still going to be up against a lot of people, you know, and still it's about a lot of people for that. It's like, do you want to be a landlord? You know, is this going to be something you want? Is this going to be the type of property that you want? Some people tell me they want a house hack, and I'm like, you're kind of like fancy. You don't want a house hack. You know, like house hacking can be really nice, by the way. You can have like beautiful units, but just in general, you're living next door to someone. So I think really getting properly informed about what you want to invest in. And sometimes it changes. People in New Jersey, California, high-end markets where the prices are high, sometimes they buy a condo out of state, you know? And condos, PS, are great investments as first investments. You know, they have HOA, so you pay for the HOA, but that pays for a non-heartache where you don't have to replace the roof. So they're very safe. People don't like them because it's not as exciting as house hacking or, you know, becoming a landlord. But becoming a landlord's not fun. And anyone who says that landlording and owning properties and managing them themselves as passive income is insane.
Yeah.
JT knows it's not passive.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing about landlording that's passive in even the slightest bit. And even if you hire property management, you still have to manage the manager so you don't lose money. Yeah. So passive income in real estate is syndications and being a limited partner in those syndications, which I've just started to do at this age. But, you know, my advice to everybody is that real estate is predominantly local. I haven't watched the regular news in like 10 years probably. I don't look on news sites. I don't know what's going on nationally other than my son will call me and say, hey, did you see this? And then I look at it. But it's because I want to focus. And it's the same for real estate. If you look at all the doom and gloom about the real estate market over the last 3 years, none of it applied to New Jersey. And mostly none of it applied across the country as they expected prices to go down and they still went up. So rates were up and prices went up. That's not how it was supposed to go. But it did. It's because there's a housing shortage. And now because the rates are still in the higher quote range, sellers can't sell because they would have to buy in with a higher rate. And that's what's creating the housing shortage. People don't understand that it's just that sellers, they don't want to sell on their 2.75% mortgage now and then have to buy into the same super hot market and pay 6% mortgage. They're like, there's more people who will stay, cram into less space even when they have more kids, just because they're waiting for the rates to come down. But historically, the rates are not very high right now. They're not going back to 2.75 and 3. You know, if we're lucky in 2024, we'll see a high 5. Probably not. So I think that this spring's going to be interesting, even in the multifamily, for people to say like, all right, it's not getting better. We need to sell because we can't have, like, we had another kid. There's no room here. So that's kind of like New Jersey is definitely doesn't relate to the national market. People don't understand that the taxes are extremely high. So using calculators for investors is popular. Doesn't work in New Jersey. You remember that from our original calls. It's like, oh, well, the taxes are $13,000. People are like, what'd you say? The same thing in Philadelphia. The taxes are $1,100 a year. And here you're like, you know, $1,100 a month. So adjusting to New Jersey real estate is trusting real estate agents who really get it. And when you want to invest, you have to work with investor-friendly agents. You know, there's just no other way around it. Regular real estate agents don't know anything about investing. I don't care what they say. They don't. Only 1% really understanding the goals of investors. And that's where you want to be sure. And every property is an investment. So you still want to be looking at it with an investment led, even if you're a first-time home buyer. That's the biggest investment you've ever made. You are a real estate investor, whether you think so or not, if you own real estate.
And I guess speaking to like real estate investing today in New Jersey, like when I bought, I think the numbers on my property, it's like about $300, $350 a month between like my mortgage and stuff like that, which is pretty good. But I was telling her like, okay, if you figure that's $3,600 a year, I pay the landscaper to come twice a week. He also comes and plows my snow because I can't do that. Yeah. I just paid a $2,000 plumbing bill. So it's like when you add up all the stuff, when I look at it at the end of the year, I probably netted even. But I also like
appreciation,
tax benefits, and all that, and you're getting your mortgage paid for. So like, I guess my question is like, at what point would you say it's like, where's like the threshold of like it's not worth it anymore? Like, would you buy a investment property that's like breaking even between like the rent and the just like the mortgage and taxes and stuff like that?
Yeah, in New Jersey, yeah, for sure. I in New Jersey, I'd buy at a negative. You have to buy at a negative if you're house hacking. I mean, you're basically going to buy at negative while you live there, lose money, and then you calculate for when you're going to leave. Because in New Jersey, your best asset is actually the appreciation. You know, and so people aren't focused on the asset; they're focused too much on the numbers. You know, if you're a cash flow investor, I mean, don't come to New Jersey. You're not going to cash flow. You know, if you're trying to buy a multi in Jersey City, you know, that costs, you know, say there's a multi that I sold for 1.89 million. The rents were 12,000. So if you put that in a bigger pockets calculator, people, oh, that's disgusting. It's the worst. Well, no, client put a lot of money down. So he was cash flowing $6,000 a month. You know, so it's predominant around how much money you're putting down, what the loan portal is, what your goals are. But New Jersey, the big benefit is appreciation. There's not going to be a downturn in like Montclair, you know, or Bloomfield. These towns aren't going down.
Yeah.
You know, Glen Ridge, you know, Chatham, Summit, these towns, Westfield, they're not going down.
No.
They're not. So it's just about, but people are overbidding to get them, and then they need to wait until it's going to catch up. So again, I just think if you're a New Jersey investor or home buyer, you can't be expecting a deal. You're not getting a deal. It's how much the value is to you for what you're going to use it for and the long term. So like investing, yeah, I'd invest at a negative net right now if I looked at the appreciation and the deal was right. It just depends on if you know those numbers. You know, you want to buy assets, even as a homeowner. Is this an asset that I'm proud of? Like people, if you're buying stocks, is this a company that I feel like I should be invested in? That's how you should be looking at this property. You know, if you buy a house and it's next to a gas station, you're going to get a good deal, but you're getting a good deal because it's next to a gas station. No offense to gas stations, but a majority of buyers aren't going to want that house later. So for the same reason you get a discount, you're going to get a discount loss when you sell. So you get the enjoyment out of it. Maybe that's a good play for you. But you have to look at those things and understand that there's a drawback. If you're getting a deal, you're not getting a deal on the way out. You're not going a plus that way as well. And some investors make that mistake. They buy the property that's sitting out there for 200 days, you know, that's next to a cemetery, which I'm fine living next to a cemetery, but 50% of the people aren't.
Yeah.
So you lose 50% of the possible people who are going to bid for that, which brings your ultimate price down.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I've just in my head I've been struggling with like the fact that I have to think more long term, and it's not going to be a short term game of like, oh, I get all this extra money each month, cash flowing, all that. Like it's like, no, I have to look at it the big picture. But in my head I'm like, okay, what would be the difference in numbers if I just bought like a regular house to live in versus like a 2-family? Like how is that going to look different long term? Like am I really going to make that much more money and then have to add in the headache of being a landlord? I'm like, is it really that bad, like that much better? But I think just more research and also just getting like a knowledgeable real estate agent to kind of help me along as well and figure out what I want.
I mean, think of it this way. A lot of people, what's out there in terms of like you go on somewhere, house hacking has just been hot for years. So it sounds awesome. That's not the right move for everybody. Me personally, the best deals that I've done in my life have all been on houses that I've lived in. Because I know where to buy a house. I know when to buy a house. I know the neighborhood to buy a house. This house was a great purchase for me. I got it at a time where I knew it was a little bit undervalued. It's close to Main Street, which is exactly what I wanted, but it had things that other people didn't see as regular home buyers. You know, my daughter lives in a unit above the garage. I have an ADU. I'm like, that's good for the long term.
Yeah.
You know, I have a bathroom on the first floor, a full bath, which in people who are looking in New Jersey know that's not always the case. So you're looking for these things that are upgrades where as maybe at the time it was showing like maybe the people didn't care that much. So that's how you buy houses. If you buy well, you can turn around and make 200 grand in a couple of years. A lot of people did it during the pandemic. I mean, look at it. Everyone's saying like, oh, you guys paid so much in the beginning of 2021 and they're up 250 now in some of these markets. So it's just about knowledge and understanding that it doesn't have to be right. It's just not as shiny, like you said. No one's going to say like, hey, great job buying a condo to live in. Yeah. Well, I mean, great job. I lived in it 3 years. I really enjoyed it. I didn't have to pay for anything, you know, that because I was paying the HOA. I had parking spaces. And then when I left, I kept it. you know, and then I left. I had the appreciation so I could pull some money out, refinance, and now I'm also renting it. So now I am at a plus money. It's just about how you think. It's just, you know, a product of social media. What's shiny? Does it look like it's good to have more doors or more money? It's more money. But won't stop talking about all the doors that they own, even though they only own like 1% of a door. So it's not a door.
Yeah. That used to drive me a little bit nuts because I think certain I don't want to go on a rant, but certain podcasts would glorify the Ohio investors that would buy the $80,000 properties, and they would flaunt the cash flow and stuff. But what they didn't really highlight is that, you know, there could be 100 houses built right next door because there's all this empty land and the appreciation doesn't go anywhere. But yeah, very interesting. We have some questions we did not send you. We want to do like a little rapid fire.
Let's go.
I love that energy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I told you I'm ready for anything. No barriers. I'm always ready.
Do you want to read them off? Or...
Yeah, you can read them.
Oh, that makes me worried. They're really crazy. All right, let's go.
All right. What is the hottest market what is going to be the hottest market in New Jersey in 2024?
Oh, I mean, just because of proximity for me, it's usually like I'm looking at Montclair. I saw, if you just look at 2023, we saw, I would say 35% cash buys over $1 million, which sounds insane to people, but that's the truth. And I saw plenty of properties between $300,000 and $1 million over the list price. So that market is very hard for regular home buyers to understand, because you'll see a list price of $999 and they'll say, great, you know, I'm covered for $1 million. And you have to tell them like, no, that's going for 1.6, because the agents price low in Montclair. So that market's hot. Honestly, if you say, is that a good value? You have to know the value. Like, I have clients who buy there, but I know what the value looks like, and that's what appraisals are for. But P.S., people are waiving appraisals. It may take them longer, but there's 6 train lines in Montclair. So that's a great opportunity in terms of like, if you can get in. There's other towns that I think are super sneaky. I mean, look at where you bought. There's a lot of towns where you can get properties at good prices and then wait for the appreciation, which is things that I find really exciting. And I also look for towns, in my opinion, which have downtowns that are increasing. You know, you look at some place like Hackettstown, they're downtown, pretty cool, but like the values around there aren't gigantic. So I look at markets like that where you can get good value for a good size home, and there's some enjoyment there.
What is your favorite business book?
Probably The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. It's like a scalable Atomic Habits type book. I really like that. I just read The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. That's really good for people who want to get into understanding money. Those are 2 really good ones. But as you know, I've read a lot of books.
Pick.
Oh, and I also really like 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. That one's really, really good.
Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite real estate book?
That's a tough one. I'm not going to say Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's what everybody says.
I wanted you to say it so bad.
Yeah. No, real estate wise, I have to think back to like when books hit me at the right time. I read a lot of real estate books now. I learned a lot about syndication from The Hands-Off Investor by Brian Burke, and that's about syndications and how to figure out how to be in them, which it really truly is passive investing. That's probably one of them, but there's probably 100. The thing about real estate books that I'll say is every book from Bigger Pockets is a good book. Like, I'm telling you, hands down, there's not a single bad book in the bunch. You just have to delete the money part from that because it's not going to apply. The book on flipping houses by Jay Scott, great. Dave Meyer just came out with a brand new book. He's great. You know, there's a lot of people that I'm friends with at Bigger Pockets who have published books that I've read and really, really enjoyed. And I think there's not a single one that you can't get a benefit on for sure.
Give us the best place in New Jersey to grab a bite.
Well, because I like my guy Jeff, I love the corner in Montclair. I was like the first customer of the corner. A lot of people don't know this. They had just opened, and I had to live like basically around the corner at the time. And I was like, "What is this place?" And I like met him, so I kind of go back to the corner. Food's great. My favorite restaurant is La Salbuin on Walnut Street in Montclair. Hands down, John and Christina chefs. That place is just phenomenal. It used to be tiny, tiny. Now they have the second space, so it's a little bit bigger. But like that's a great date night spot. The food's phenomenal too.
Yeah. That's awesome. If you could own a property internationally, where would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. If I'm not considering that I have to travel to get there,
Yeah.
ooh, this is really tough. I would say Japan because part of me wants to live in Japan for a little while. But if I'm thinking like investment properties, yeah, I went to Belgium. I loved Belgium. I thought it was one of the most interesting towns to live in. It's like modern with historic culture. But I'll stick with Japan,
Very cool.
but probably somewhere like Kyoto instead of Tokyo.
What was the most expensive property you ever sold?
Ooh, like as an agent or on my own?
I guess either.
Well, I can tell you one story before we hop off, which was like my dumbest story. I had a property in Sarasota that was my personal residence. That was phenomenal. We bought it great. We added a 3-car garage and a unit over the garage. We built a lagoon pool in the middle. And then I went to sell it right before 2008. So it was probably like the end of 2007. My ex and I had already got divorced. And so we were both planning on moving back to New York, kids separately. And I wasn't an agent at the time. So I contacted my friend. She's like, "Oh, what do you think it's worth?" And I said, "I think it's worth 2.3." And she's like, "It's not worth 2.3." And me being the seller that I don't want to work with now was like, "It's worth 2.3." So we put it on for 2.3, got an offer the first week for 1.4. I was like disgusted. I was like, "Tell him to go screw himself. I'm not taking this." And then 2008 hit, ended up selling it for under $1 million. So good job by me. But yeah, I have a couple properties under right now. One closing on Friday for 2.35, and I just went under on another one for 2.3. So my price point's increased as I've developed clientele that's looking for higher properties. But I've played around with properties of higher value on the investor side, and I think it's just a matter of, again, like what's the asset worth, what's a long term, and I have a lot of long term assets which help me watch them accumulate over 20 years in terms of appreciation.
You prefer a day at the beach or a day in New York City?
Neither. Yeah. I'd go into the woods. Yeah, I'd go into nature. I like the beach for 30 minutes tops. It's too hot. I can't read. It's too bright. There's people all over. I don't want to go in the water. But 30 minutes, I actually really enjoy it. And New York City, again, I like being in New York City. I don't like coming back to New Jersey. It's just annoying. But I like the city, but I am very adverse to crowds and noise. So I have to have like a mission. Like my son and I, on my birthday coming up, we're going to see a play. I have another play after that. I'll go in to see that because I have a specific purpose, but I need to like know the way out.
Name one person you've been dying to have on your podcast.
Well, I've been waiting for James Daynard, and he knows it because I just talked about it. So James Daynard's one of the 4 hosts of On the Market, Bigger Pockets, and I've had Henry Washington, Kathy Fecky, and Dave Meyer on. So James is the last remaining one. And I'm on a text chain with him and Henry, and he's just like, that guy's so busy. So I'm excited to get him on because he's flipped like a billion homes. He's definitely one. I mean, would I like to have Bob Kiyosaki on? Yeah, I think it would be interesting. I think it would be fun. And I think, we've been growing steadily, so I have access to a lot of guests. And the coolest thing I think I found from my podcast is there's guests that I found on social media just absolutely crushing it who are like in their 20s. And then there's people in their 50s who got started later. It's just like we're trying to show people you can start at any time and that you don't have to match the doors like we've been talking about, or you don't have to be like amazing on social media. But honestly, what we've talked about with social media, a lot of these investors, built followings and got private money from exposing what they do authentically on social media at a young age. And now they're, I've had multiple people on, they have 30 doors, they're in their 20s and they're not faking it. Yeah. They have 30 doors. Like, I know what a fake door is. These are real doors that they're managing because they're smart, and the times are changing for what access you can get. Like we talked about in the beginning in terms of like multi-hyphenate. I mean, we're hoping to move the podcast to be doing things for more elementary and high school students so they can learn about real estate before, because not teaching it in the school. Yeah. But like, wow, what if you knew about it in high school and then you could tell your parents about it and then you guys could work together on buying a multifamily and then, you have your kid in an ADU. Yeah. These are things that I think that's how I grew up. I lived in ADUs. My dad would always get houses with a second house because we were just loud. I had 2 stepbrothers and a half sister. We'd stay up till 3 a.m. Like, he's just like, yeah, I don't think so. So we'd have he would just build an ADU, but they're really functional. And with the housing shortage, accessory dwelling units are becoming more and more popular. They're also a huge windfall for cash flow if you have a single family.
Yeah. Pork roll or Taylor ham?
Probably Taylor ham, for sure. Taylor ham. Yeah. That's such a New Jersey thing. Yeah, I'd rather have bacon.
What was your favorite ever art purchase?
Ooh. Well, it's upstairs in my bedroom. It's called The Bear by Sue-Ann Wong. I'm still obsessed with it. It's right across from my bed. I look at it every single morning. It's like my favorite art piece. And I have like 4 or 5 pieces by her, but like it's just a drawing of a giant grizzly bear with like 15 of her. This is going to sound weird on a podcast, but 15 of her in cheerleader outfits. I know what everybody's saying. You can just look it up, The Bear by Sue-Ann Wong. I own the only one. It's a drawing. It's literally phenomenal. She's like my favorite artist ever. The work's just impeccable, and it's a drawing. It's just, there's one over there that's I Hate Parties, which definitely also suits me, which again, it's a bunch of her looking over a cliff with one panda bear at the bottom in the other room that says I Hate Parties, which is me to a T. Will not go to parties under any circumstances.
And finally, give us your biggest goal for 2024.
Ooh. Well, so my word for 2024 is impact. I have a word each year, and it's impact this year. And I think I transformed the way that I look at what I want to do. Like, I was planning to open a mastermind for investors, charge like $10,000, and I have a lot of friends who do it and they're great. And at the last second, I was like, I don't want the pressure of having to perform for $10,000 for multiple people. And I just like giving away all of my information for free. So my goal is to have the most impact. I have a lot of things with the team and with the podcast that I'm looking to grow. I just want to have the most impact on people. And mediums like this, like we were saying before, are phenomenal. We can broadcast a podcast. It can go to 10 people, 1,000 people. One person could hear something that could change their life, and we'll never know. I hope we know, but we might not. And the possibility of that makes it worth it every single day for you guys to do this podcast, for me to do my podcast. Like, I just recorded 125 today. When I started, I was like, and it's the 4th podcast that I've had. And this is the one where I'm like, obviously gotten the farthest, and there's no stopping now. But you look at it and you're like, that's just a lot of information out there for people to take in. Yeah. I'm never going to know that it attached to a lot of people, but it could change something. So that's a great way to think. And I know it'll have impact on someone. So like that's 2024 in a nutshell for me.
Nice. That's very cool. I like that. You pick a word each year.
Yeah. Well, it's like a focus, I think like I have goals. I have a list of things. They're on Instagram because I like to tell people what I'm trying to accomplish. But those, like, a lot of things can happen. Like, you could get sick for a month. You wouldn't be able to do it. But one word really boils down. Like, it makes it easier for you to achieve. Like, I've already achieved it, actually. It's like February. I've already had an impact, but I'm not done. Now it's like, how much more impact can I have the rest of the year? And, being able to talk in any open forum like this just gives that more availability for someone to hear, like, hey, that's good information.
Yeah.
What more can we ask for?
Definitely. So tell everyone where they can find you as far as like your website, Instagram, podcast, like all of it.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. So the podcast, which I'm really, really proud of, is called Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. we recorded episode 125 now. We publish on Monday and Thursday, so it's 2 a week now. Had like the biggest guests in the business on that. That's easy to find. I mean, you can just look it up on any podcast portal. You can find it through my hub site, which is trustgreen with an E at the end.com. That's where all the information is about me. My team site is streamlined with a D .properties. So if you're looking for real estate advice, help, videos, anything, you can find those. And those are the same things on Instagram. Instagram, I'm trustgreen with an E at the end, and it's Streamlined Properties together. And then on Instagram, the podcast, same. It's on Instagram, it's Zen Real Estate Investing, because you know, how long can you make these things? But if you use all of those word choices, I'm not hard to find on social. I make a lot of content, as do you. And I the one thing I'll say about social media before we hop off, a lot of people are always critiquing other people's social media. It's not good. It's not. I literally make whatever I want because I don't care. Like, I do it for myself. Everyone's like, oh, you put so many Instagram stories out. I'm like, yeah, because at the end of every day, I look at my stories to see what I did, and then I pat myself on the back. So when they say, oh, why'd you put in your Headspace and Peloton? I'm like, it's for me. If you look at it, that's cool. Like, thank you. But I'm doing it for me. I like what I post. If other people don't like it, not going to affect me. And I think if more people turn the focus on that, to having some enjoyment, instead of like now turning social media into their business when they can't even run their own business, it might be a little bit more fun.
Yeah, totally.
That's definitely true.
I think we always say that, like, as long as like you're enjoying your content, most likely majority of people will too. And people like that. Like, people like seeing what other people are doing. That's why social media is a thing.
Well, they can tell you're enjoying it.
Exactly.
So then it becomes more enjoyable, instead of like doing some stiff thing where you can see them looking over into the words. Like, I've recorded hundreds of YouTube videos. I've never once had a script, and I've never stopped the video once. And I don't even watch it again. I just end it, title it, do all the stuff on YouTube, and publish it. I don't care. Like, it's not supposed to be perfect. I'm not a movie producer. You know, if I have a booger in my nose, no problem. Hopefully I'll check, but if not, I'm not going to delete the video. Like, it is what it is. It's just like, it's not that big of a deal. You can, if you don't like it, you can just delete it.
It also eliminates like decision fatigue. Like, oh, it wasn't perfect. Like, I don't have time for it. It's like, just do it and put it out there. And
like, you have to do that. The best advice I heard, I think you guys will like this. So I heard it from Ricky Caruth, and he was saying it to real estate agents. He said, if you're really scared of being on video, and this could go to any business that you guys work with, record a video of whatever you want every day for 30 days and don't publish any of them. And at the end of 30 days, if you look back, you'll probably have one or more that you're willing to publish. But if you just make a video and don't post it because you're too scared, once you look back at the 30, you'll at least have one, probably way more, because you'll have recorded 30. So you'll know, like, I mean, who's even watching this? The algorithm is so messed up on all social media. Our friends don't even see what we're doing. So why do you care if you have a hair out of place? Like, just put it up there. One person will make a comment, and you'll realize it's all worth it.
Yeah. So true. Wow.
Awesome. All right. I think that wraps things up, right?
Yeah.
All
Thanks
right.
for
appreciate it, guys.
Yes, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming over.
A lot of great knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Fun.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.